and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times. KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
I don't wanna write this down, I don't wanna tell you how I feel right now. I don't wanna take no time to write this down, I don't wanna tell you how I feel right now. Hey, tomorrow may never come. For you or me, life is not promised. Tomorrow may never show up. For you and me, this life is not promised. I ain't no perfect man, I'm trying to do the best that I can with what it is I have. I ain't no perfect man, I'm trying to do the best that I can with what it is I have. Put my heart and soul into the song. Yes, yes. I hope you feel me from where I am to wherever you are. I mean that sincerely. Tomorrow may never come. For you and me, life is not promised. Tomorrow may never appear. You better hold this very moment, very close to you right now. Very close to you right now. So very close to you right now. So close to you. Don't be afraid to let it shine. My homie said, shine your light on the world. Shine your light for the world to see. My hobby said, shine
KBLA Talk 1580. It's a Talking Point Tuesday where we debunk the BS, and there may be no topic with more BS talking points associated with it and untrue propaganda surrounding it than the issue of reparations. Joining me this morning to help debunk some of those or give you a different perspective, so to speak, a national coordinator for the group, the Coalition of Concerned Freedmen. They recently put out a release about affirmative action and message to college presidents. She is a business consultant and an activist. Denise Long, good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. Good to see you again.
Yeah, welcome back in. I'm happy to have you here. And, you know, we were talking about this last week, the issue of reparations. You were breaking it down, how you see it, why it's important to you, and why this is something that you're dedicated to as a conservative, as a Black conservative. And it's one of the other things I do, Denise, on Talking Point Tuesday. I typically have Black conservatives on, and we like to fight. But what I realized last week talking to you is that we actually agree on more things than we disagree on when it comes to reparations, even though we're coming to it from two different sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be, right? Reparations is a justice claim that is payment on an obligation, a promise that was made by the United States government and sabotaged by Confederates. People of goodwill should be able to work across the aisle. We're not enemies if our interest is the best interest of the American people, and reparations is certainly that.
You said a bunch of things there that I, like usual, my second time interviewing you, apparently this is a thing that you do, that need further investigation. One of them is you said reparations is good for Americans. You didn't say Black Americans or Negroes or Freedmen or African Americans. You said Americans. And that is certainly one of the talking points. This will bankrupt America. It's not fair that we have to pay reparations because it's going to have a negative effect on the general public of America. You seem to think differently. Explain why.
Well, my goodness, part of the issue that people complain about with poverty, with crime, with children who don't seem to have productive things to do with their time, with students who are unable to read, with the what we call in education, the poverty of words that many of our kindergartners enter into because nobody's reading to them, just many of the things that are a problem in America can be addressed through repairing Black Americans who are at the bottom of most positive socioeconomic markers. So when we take care of that issue, that wealth dearth, that wealth gap, because of the slave lineage wealth gap, then we can solve many of those issues that people complain about, because the problems are a symptom. So the poverty, the things that I just mentioned, education and the other things, are a symptom of a longstanding impact of policy on Black Americans. And to fix that really does address issues in America, and everybody should want that.
For all Americans, I think it's a really important point, because it goes to another popular talking point, which we can address when we come forward, which is this idea. We barely touched on it, but we didn't have time to go deep, Denise, last time you were on, which is I didn't own slaves. My daddy didn't own slaves. I shouldn't have to pay for the sins of my father. What's more, you were not enslaved, so why should you receive reparation? We'll look at that when we come forward, exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrimo when we come forward.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, in downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. But there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
Anyone can choose to make a difference. You can help people succeed, rebuild after disasters, protect the environment, or feed the hungry. Not only will you make a difference for others, but for yourself. You can earn money for college, learn career skills, and make friendships that last a lifetime. Make a difference. Choose your future. Choose AmeriCorps.
Moments like my daughter telling me a new joke mean a lot to me. But after being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, or MBC, which is breast cancer that is spread to other parts of the body, they mean even more. I take Ibrance, palbociclib.
Ibrance 125 milligram tablets with an aromatase inhibitor is for adults with HR-positive, HER2-negative NBC as the first hormonal-based therapy. Ask your doctor about Ibrance and visit Ibrance.com. Ibrance may cause low white blood cell counts that may lead to serious infections. Ibrance may cause severe inflammation of the lungs. Both of these can lead to death. Tell your doctor right away if you have new or worsening symptoms, including trouble breathing, shortness of breath, cough, or chest pain. Before taking Ibrance, tell your doctor if you have fever, chills, or other signs of infection, liver or kidney problems, are or plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding. Common side effects include low red blood cell and low platelet counts, infections, tiredness, nausea, sore mouth, abnormalities in liver blood tests, diarrhea, hair thinning or loss, vomiting, rash, and loss of appetite.
Ugh, I don't have time for a cold.
Honey.
Honey?
You need DayQuil Severe Honey flavor.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honey-licious taste. Because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe Honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honey-licious. Power through your day, medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
And we are talking with Denise Long. She's with the Coalition of Concerned Freedmen. You can find them at concernedfreedmen.com, concernedfreedmen.com. It's a Talking Point Tuesday around here. We like breaking down things you hear over and over again. Maybe you even repeat them, but they do not serve you. Today's episode of First Things First is brought to you by Wealth Management Financial Advisors. They've got tax services, financial planning, and so much more. Find them at wealthmanagementlb.com. That's wealthmanagementlb.com. So what do you say to those folks? I didn't do this. Why should I pay for it?
Yeah, it's not a personal debt to them. It is an obligation of a federal government that committed a crime against humanity, which has no expiration date. That crime against humanity would be the 250 years of enslavement, part of which was under the British Empire, and 100 years of which was under a constitutional republic that said all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. While those people wrote those words and signed those documents, they were, quote unquote, owners of our ancestors. In addition to that crime against humanity, we have another 100 years in 1865 when the country had to fight a war in order to thwart white supremacy and a desire to have perpetual Black servitude. After that war, they promised our people that those pretty words that I just spoke would also cover us. They implemented the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And in the 100 years when the Confederates got their rights back, they spent time implementing Jim Crow against our people unconstitutionally. Our harm is not just slavery. That's the beginning of it in the formal United States. The rest of it, Jim Crow and even the discrimination in the post-civil rights era of the 1960s, is still a continuation of a legacy of harm against a specific people. That would be us, the multi-generational Black American, the American Negro, the descendant of U.S. slaves. People get it twisted, and I think they do this on purpose, Dominique, where they talk about slavery because they say it happened 400 years ago, right? Which we know the math on that is not accurate. It didn't all happen 400 years ago because emancipation happened in 1865 and slaves lived literally into the mid 1900s. So they throw that talking point out there to make it sound like a long time ago. The harms affect you. They affect me. I'm sure you have friends who've experienced police brutality, racial profiling, children being overly suspended or disciplined in school, employment discrimination. All those things are present day events, but it's a continued unbroken chain of harm that needs to be repaired.
Right. So two things that you said, and actually we'll start with this, which is this idea that it is not about enslavement. It is a contract. It is almost like a business deal that was made, promises made in the context of a business deal by the United States.
Absolutely. Special Field Order 15 is one of those things. It's on paper. Folks can find that on the Coalition of Concerned Freedmen as well. The full text of Special Field Order 15, which was made by Tecumseh Sherman under the approval of then President Abraham Lincoln, which, talked about allocated literal land. And there's a map of this land on the East Coast that covers Jacksonville through south of Charlotte that was designated a safe zone for the freed people that was supposed to be governed by the freed people. In addition to that, the Constitution is a social contract, right? We, the governed, have agreed to governments with certain boundaries. And the boundaries in the post-Civil War social contract was for the Negro to be seen and treated as human, and for those people who had broken up the country to be punished and prevented from holding office, and to also be tried criminally and civilly if they harmed the freed people. That has not happened consistently since the adoption of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And we know that Special Field Order 15, which you mentioned, was rescinded by Confederate Andrew Johnson after the Confederates murdered Lincoln.
Well, why is that important to understand the difference between this being, harm for just enslavement and harm for this continuation? I mean, this is one of the things that the California State Reparations Task Force, I believe, did a really good job on, is connecting the dots between the harm, which is not just the emotional and physical, but the actual economic harm of enslavement, and then how it is a continuous policy or continuous enforcement of the deprivation of our rights. Why do you think it's important to make that distinction?
Well, from a legal perspective, and this is such a good question, from a legal perspective, one has to show standing in a court. You'll see that many cases related to reparation and other historical injustices for Negroes particularly have been thrown out for lack of standing or any other reason that somebody would create. But standing tends to be one, and there are multiple dimensions of that, right? But for us, it is showing that we wouldn't be talking about slavery and all that had happened had the injustices been fixed going forward in that post-Civil War social contract, and they haven't. So we have standing because the harms have continued. They've just taken different forms. So while our ancestors were enslaved, right, our great-great-grandparents, and for some people they're great-great-grandparents, and for some more than that, while they were enslaved, our parents endured Jim Crow. We are enduring employment discrimination, the mass incarceration. So the standing is what matters. And we are showing a specific harm to a specific people, and that the courts or whomever, legislation, executive orders, can provide remedy to our harm by taking specific actions, and that they are responsible for those actions happening to us in the present day, not just in the past. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it leads to another question, as most things with me do, you'll find, Denise.
Oh, good.
So when you talk about standing, this idea of, which means you have the grounds to be the one to bring that action, that you have the connectivity to the action or harm that's needed to be the one in court or the one seeking repair. Why is the term Negro or the term freedman, do you see that as part of that standing, that's by acknowledging or preserving this idea of a Negro people? Because, of course, most people today Black people today don't call ourselves Negroes or even freedmen. So what does that have to do with standing, if anything?
Yeah, so I love the questions. This is beautiful. Love it, love it. So it shows that we are a party to the injury. So you talked about how with AB 3121, the task force in California, they presented a whole robust, treasure trove, really horror show of the injuries that have happened to the multi-generational Black American. It's important for us to show that regardless of what you called us on paper, whether we were Negro, colored, freedmen for that while during the Reconstruction era, Black American or African American in the 90s to forward, we were subjects to unequal protection. We have a continued chain of harm that amounts to genocide, which I threw that word in there, but I know that's another path to go down. But so it shows that, yes, we are the people who suffered the injury in fact, and we have the legal cover and grounds upon which to bring forth a claim of injustice in order to get restitution, repair, and reparation for the injuries that have happened to us. Negro is part of what we were called, and it's what we were called more than any other thing on the legislation, executive orders, and judicial decisions in the United States, both the things that harmed us, like Black codes, as well as the things that sought to repair us, like Special Field Order 15.
So then as we see, I'm trying not to pick on you, Denise, but as we see your Republican colleagues that seem to be, I don't know if it's even right to call them colleagues, that seem to be seeking to erase our history, wouldn't that impact our standing? I mean, if we're not even being taught about, the harm, if we're not even being referred to as freedmen in that context, not in just today's context, but in the context of Reconstruction. If we're being taught that our enslavement had benefits because we learned trades, doesn't that impact our standing? Doesn't it undermine our claim for reparations?
Oh, now you're saying a lot in there, and I love it. So let's address those things. Part of it is what people are doing to undermine Black American, African American history and the telling of our story is not new to the people who we're dealing with today. So we have to recognize that the sons and daughters of the Confederacy, or the women of the Confederacy, went about a public education campaign to codify the idea of a war of northern aggression into pre-K through 12, to teach American children that the Confederacy had some kind of honor and all of these other monikers that you still hear people saying today. The people that we're dealing with today are a product of that kind of indoctrination in education, ironically, right? The indoctrination. What they're doing is painting public perception of history. They've spun a narrative. And because of that, they are people who bastardize history, whitewash history, and do this whole lost cause sort of education and anti-Negro sentiment, are changing the receptivity of Americans from the Reconstruction mindset of, in order to repair the nation, we have to repair this injury that we caused when we had all these pretty words on paper. At the same time, what we have to recognize is, I think the Republican Party, in my experience, the Republican Party is in an identity crisis. Many of the people who claim to be Republicans are really antebellum Democrats. They are really of the Confederate mindset, and they've been smart enough in their quest to make the South rise again. They've been smart enough to infiltrate both parties in order to get what they want. And so what we need to recognize, and I'll say this one thing, not to go on too long, is that when we talk about the removal of Negro and our history, we have to recognize that two Democrats, Grace Ming and Barack Obama, actually signed legislation that was literally removing Negro and redacting it and replacing it with things like Black and African American, which basically means any Black person around the world can come over here and become what was designed specifically for the Negro. And it was the Republicans via Donald Trump who put a pause on that and has since required public comment around the removal of that and an analysis of the cost of removing that language from our legislation and all the things that were designed to repair us.
All right, like you said, I'm not going to get into parsing like which party did what about what term, but I do think, it's worth noting that, no serious effort at any repair or reparation has come from either party so far on the federal level.
Yeah, and part of that, again, to throw another thing out there, and I hope I said it was Donald Trump that thwarted that removal to take action.
You did, and I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about the author of the quote, "Ish-hole countries," but,
Well,
and whether or not he's racist.
Yeah, the only reason I say that is because I want to make sure I didn't misspeak. I wasn't trying to go back. I just want to make sure I didn't misspeak and cleared it up. Repeat your question for me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to have a back and forth there.
No, it's fine. Back and forth is good radio. I was just saying that as far as I am concerned, although I know Conyers tried for many years, that there has been no federal effort coming from either party. I mean, when he was in office, I used to say, okay, art of the deal, where's our reparations?
Yeah. So, that is the thing, right? I think, so to throw another thing in there, the United States, since Nixon, at the behest of Nixon and all the things that go on behind the scene, and John Patrick Moynihan, who wrote that report about the Black American family, have been applying this concept of benign neglect to the Black American community. It is a policy that they have adopted. There's a memo that Moynihan wrote to Nixon, I believe it was in 1970, but he'd been on this tip for a while that we need to stop talking so much about Negroes and start talking about other people and bringing other people in, because white people are fatigued of focusing on the political topic of the generation, right, which was the Negro problem, so to speak. So we've been under this concept of benign neglect all this time, and we talk about it kind of casually, right? We've all heard somebody say, it's benign neglect that they're doing to us. But it's a real thing that had been advocated for and accepted, apparently. And I would submit to you that now is the time to actually make this claim. I think in so many ways, Dominique, we've been just fatigued by the benign neglect. We've been fatigued by people knowing our situation and doing nothing about it, not really recognizing that this call to stop focusing on the Negro was actually a federal demand. There was a federal policy to not focus on us specifically anymore because whites and other people were getting fatigued by the focus on us. And you see that today. You can't say Black American or, Negro or you can't say Negro, but any of those things without somebody adding us to a serial list of special interests. I think what we need is a presidential candidate and legislators who are willing to implement the full scope of the post-Civil War social contract who aren't owned by other people.
We got news, traffic, and sports right here. Hard stop. Then continuing our conversation on reparations with Denise Long and Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. African-American Oprah Winfrey and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are catching a lot of heat after posting a video asking for donations to help victims of the Maui wildfires. The video posted to each of the duo's Instagram accounts asked viewers to donate to a relief fund that they just launched with $10 million of their own. But for the tens of thousands of viewers who commented and shared the video, that wasn't enough. A majority of the comments said Winfrey and Johnson can afford to donate more, and they should be asking their millionaire friends, not common people, to donate. About 30,000 people are believed to be still at the Burning Man Festival in the Nevada desert. Traffic finally started to pour out of the counterculture event yesterday after heavy rains flooded the area, turning it into a mud pit. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Right now at Lowe's, buy one, get one 50% off on select interior and exterior paints and exterior stains via Lowe's gift card rebate. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 9/6. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowe's.com/rebates for details. While supplies last.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Interesting match tonight in the U.S. Open tennis tournament. Two brothers are facing each other in the quarterfinals. Francis Tiafoe, ranked 10th in the world, takes on number 35 Ben Shelton. Tiafo and Shelton are two of only 3 Americans left in the men's bracket. On the women's side, 19-year-old Coco Gauff is in the quarterfinals for the second straight year. She faces Jelena Ostapenko of Latvia Tuesday morning. Some household trouble for the Dodgers. Starting pitcher Julio Arias was arrested on charges of felony domestic violence, his second domestic incident. Arias was released on $50,000 bail. His court date is September 27th. The Dodgers are in Miami tonight to start a 6-game road trip. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Happy anniversary, KBLA!
KBLA Talk 1580 is celebrating its 2nd year anniversary, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
Always bet on black and black.
With KBLA Talk 1580.
You're ready to level up to your next home or your first home, but maybe you still have some questions. Come check out Rocket. We're ready to help. Start with a Rocket Mortgage home buying plan and get Rocket rewards along the way for cash toward closing. You got this, and Rocket's got you. Only with Rocket. Visit rocketbuyingplan.com to get started today.
Call 866-357-5727 for conditions and restrictions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it. Together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Hi, it's Tavis Smiley. KBLA Talk 1580 is inviting you to join us on Saturday, September 16th, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. for our very first economic empowerment event for the community. This event is free and is powered by Caltrans. We're doing this in association with Rambo House, and here's Rambo to tell you more.
Contracts. I'm going to say it again for all of us small business owners out there. Contracts. Rambo House, KBLA, Tavis, me. Oh my God, this is going to be massive. I truly thank Caltrans for giving us the opportunity to focus on contracts. Listen, that's what it's all about to be a small business in LA. That's how we hire our own. That's how we expand our community is contracts. KBLA1580.com is for you to have a seat at our contracts-focused event. Contract Ready does it again. We had over 900 last time. So you guys know how exciting this is. And if you just think that you want to get into contracts and you're close to it, bring your friends out for September 16th at the Marriott Hotel. Listen, you know where to register. KBLA1580.com. Come see me. I can't wait to see you. Let's do it, Tavis.
So be sure to go to KBLA1580.com for all the details. We'll see you Saturday, September 16th.
She's so smooth. I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
And we appreciate you. You're welcome into the conversation if you want to join. 800-920-1580. 800-920-1580. I'm talking with Denise Long. She's a national coordinator for the Coalition of Concerned Freedmen. Denise, you were, I didn't mean to cut you off. We had a hard stop there for news, traffic, and sports. But you were talking about the Moynihan Report, which is actually under President Johnson, right, back in 1965, and the lingering, I guess, impacts of that in terms of benign neglect. And I think it occurs to me that benign neglect, is one thing if a person is sitting there in a mansion with a food full of table and a table full of food, and quite another if a person is drowning and you just decide to do nothing. That would be my metaphor. But anyway, go ahead and finish the thought before I move on to my next questions. Denise, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that was us. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. So yes, the Moynihan Report was written in 1965, but what I'm referring to is a memorandum for the president that Daniel Patrick Moynihan sent to President Nixon on January 16th of 1970, where he literally says that the Negro issue would benefit from a period of, quote, benign neglect, his absolute words. You can find that in the nixonlibrary.gov. And so my only point there was that the benign neglect is what's happening, why you haven't seen some specificity on the left and the right, in addition to people who just don't want it to happen. And what we do need for it to happen is legislators and a president and executives who are not owned by special interest groups. And typically we don't have folks who are self-funded enough and courageous enough to be able to do that nowadays. That was the point that I was making when we concluded.
Got it. Okay. I mean, well, we could definitely, that's another whole show topic, right? But you're also, aside from your work, as a consultant, and your work with the Coalition of Concerned Freedmen, you're also a commentator. You're on Fox News. You're also on the Grio and Breitbart. And I wonder, how do folks react to your arguments for reparations in those more conservative spaces?
Yeah, now that's been an interesting thing, right? I wrote a piece for Newsweek called, we Republicans should be leading the case for reparations. And I think it's been an evolution. I think many folks hadn't thought about reparations as a viable talking point for quite some time. I think they don't really know what it even means. I think people have misperceptions about it being a taking from white people, as if white folks are the only people who pay taxes, and if it's about a debt that they owe versus one that the government has an obligation for. And then I've seen some evolution in that. I've seen many Republicans or conservatives, if you want to call them that, who've come around to this framing that reparations is an investment in American citizens, and it is an obligation given what has been put on paper, Special Field Order 15, as well as the concept that, the government was on the right track. Our country was on the right track to unite, but it was subverted and sabotaged by Confederates. I think it's a whole new way for people to think, and I think we will never have 100% of people in the United States on board for reparations, but it's not a matter of public opinion and consensus. But I am seeing some evolution in people's agreement that it is necessary.
I love the way you put that. It's not a matter of public agreement and consensus. It's a contract that was signed, which needs to be honored. But yet, I've been curious about whether or not we could move the needle with conservatives and independents on reparations. I'm going to tell you, Denise Long, I do interview, not a lot, but a steady stream of Black conservatives, Black Republicans over the years. And what I find, personal opinion here, is that typically they tend to take a very anti-Black or you can call it Freedmen, anti-Black positions. And I'm not just saying, because they're Democrats. No, not that. I'm talking about things like reparations, which would appear to be in the interests of all Black people, regardless of their political party. And yet, and that's just one example. I mean, it's stunning for me, really. And it's one of the reasons why I struggle with this idea of bipartisanship when it comes to Black folks, because of the anti-Blackness that I experience among many Black conservatives. I would think Black conservatives might be an even harder sell on reparations than some of the, some of the mainstream white conservatives.
Yeah, and so most Black conservatives, and I believe Pew Research did some research about this, but most Black conservatives actually do support the concept of reparations.
I haven't met any of them. I haven't. You and I don't know if Rashid is Republican or Democrat, but
I don't think so.
or conservative. You and one other friend of mine are the only ones that I know of.
Well, there's a reason for that, because some people are throwing red meat to what they call conservatives, which are really, and I know I use this language and I mean it when I say it, it's not hyperbole, but people who have a Confederate mindset and people who bought into the indoctrination that the problem with the Negro is that the Negro ain't pulled himself up by his bootstraps and he hasn't worked hard enough. These are things that people have been indoctrinated into thinking, and part of, I call it out all the time, part of conservative media, the platform, is that they throw red meat to that narrative, and they're not about the business of getting people to think critically about these issues. And that's really what we're needing at this point. And I am seeing some movement in that on Twitter. And I know people talk about Twitter not being a real place. I'm on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. Many other people I work with on the ground level are active on Twitter. Those are where those unorthodox conversations are happening.
Right. Well, Disneyland's not a real place either, but you do find real people in there sometimes. So we'll talk about this when we continue, but we can start on it real quick now. I guess I got into some beef with some, folks that call themselves FBA, which I know is, related, right? The Tariq Nasheed sort of ADOS model. Because, and I can see just from some of your comments that we probably don't see eye to eye on this particular point either. But it's one of the reasons why I'm curious to get your take, because you have different angles on some things that I think are illuminating. The idea when people say that Black Americans are separate from Black people throughout the diaspora, in a sense, I understand it in terms of people saying, and this came up in the California Task Force, well, it's going to be easier to get standing if you're talking about a specific group. I look at reparations globally because I think Britain owes reparations to, Black Brits, and, Jamaica probably owes reparations, Britain, to Jamaican Blacks, and you could go on, and I know that you're familiar with that conversation. My concern was not that I thought every Black person in the whole world should get reparations from the United States government or United States corporations or states or cities, depending on where we're making the case. My concern was twofold. I don't want to see reparations turned into welfare. The welfarization of reparations is problematic for me. Meaning now, let me see your ID, go stand in a line like this was food stamps or general assistance, and let us disrespect you and crap on you in order to give you something you're owed. And as a child who had that experience coming up of being, at times in my life in that system, I know that it's terrible, demoralizing, and not set up to help you get from point A to point B. So this idea that we, for fear of, a few immigrants that are Black accidentally getting reparations, that would turn this thing into the welfare state, I don't agree with it.
Okay. So reparation is not just one thing. There are thousands of reparatory claims that have actually been adjudicated and paid in the United States. The unfortunate thing is when we Negroes talk about reparation, everybody wants to bring their harm into our claim. We're talking about our claim. Other people can start their own claim and call it reparation for yada yada. We're talking about reparation for American Negroes with that specific harm that unbroken chain of harms that we talked about earlier. So people need to realize they can start their own thing. In addition to the welfareization piece, I don't want that either. The nonprofit industrial complex, I'm not interested in seeing being propagated anymore onto the Black community or anyone else. Reparation for the American Negro should absolutely lift multi-generational Black Americans out, not only out of poverty, but into the middle and upper middle class. We built a whole nation that has companies that have trillions of dollars, companies that were started back at a time when our folks were enslaved that are thriving today. And so it should lift us out of poverty and away from welfare altogether. And when folks are talking about reparation, tort law and injury law should let folks know that you have to be very clear about who caused the injury and who receives the restitution. And that's why that delineation, as we call it, is very clear. I don't see myself as separate and apart from other people of African descent and the like, in a sense that I can't connect with you because we, and all that. But there is a distinction between the injured and our claim and those who were not injured. I think people are more or less eloquent and gracious in how they communicate that distinction.
Talking with Denise Long. It's a Talking Point Tuesday. We're breaking down the talking points about reparations. Write it down. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Extreme heat can make you very sick and can be deadly. For Californians 65 and over, it's important to have a plan. Ask your healthcare provider if your medications affect your ability to cool down. Know the signs of heat illness and stroke, as well as the location of your nearest cooling center or air-conditioned space. And if you have loved ones over 65, be sure to check in on them on hot days. Learn how to stay safer from extreme heat at heatreadyca.com. Brought to you by the state of California.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 25th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase, September 22nd through September 24th. Join us for the opening night celebration on Friday, September 22nd, and enjoy the short film showcase featuring 47 films by emerging black male directors from across the country. Continuing on Saturday, September 23rd and Sunday, September 24th. All events will be held at the Regal LA Live Cinemas, 1000 West Olympic Boulevard in downtown Los Angeles. For more information and tickets, visit bherc.org. That's bherc.org or call 323-957-4656. That's 323-957-4656. Don't miss your chance to celebrate excellence in black cinema all weekend long at the Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. See you there.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talent, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DePrima right now.
Right now. I've been talking about reparations, Denise Long, since I think the 90s, when I used to do a show called Street Science with Dick Gregory would come on. He was a big proponent of that. Mr. Peoples here in Los Angeles, of course, Attorney Charles Ogletree, may he rest in peace. But I was surprised to learn that the first conversation about reparations actually happened while slavery was still on and popping. So this is a long-term project, right? And we have seen some success. Places like Georgetown, right, University, where they, as you state, get very specific. We sold this many enslaved people. We have names. We have descendants, and this is what we're going to do. So this is an ongoing project, and we are starting to see more global signs of it as, places like Jamaica start going after their reparations, places in the diaspora. So I understand what you're saying about being really specific. I also, and I haven't seen this with you, but I've seen what I feel is really a divisiveness that happens with some of the ADOS folks, which to me doesn't serve the mission of gaining reparations. But a lot of it is around, Africans are bad, Jamaicans are bad, the way people talk about, the vice president or anybody who's not multi-generational Black American, and I don't know. I don't think it serves us. I think we opened this can of worms at the end of the last conversation we had, but I think Rashid was the one that addressed it. If I have a birthright to the United States of America, as my ancestors built this place, not alone, but a big part of it, without being paid for doing that, and I have a birthright in Africa because I am a descendant of people on the motherland, not just the people that sold us out, Black people who sold us out, but the Black people who had their loved ones stolen. Why would I forego the claim to the African continent? Why wouldn't I keep my claims on both continents? Why wouldn't I benefit from the inheritance on both continents?
Yeah, so you opened that question, and I said I agree with that. I don't think it's either or. Here's the distinction that's happening, though. So there's this. While we are talking about reparations in the American context, there are also people who are entering into the nation, and they aren't necessarily steeped in the history of the United States. They also bring with them baggage and preconceived notions of why Black Americans are at the bottom. I have had white friends of mine talk to me about how immigrants talk to them, some immigrants, of course, talk to them about Black Americans. I have had my own negative experiences with those things. Other people in the you called it the ADOS community, but the larger reparations community have also had people come after them, Black immigrants come after them with derisive language and the like, while at the same time, those people have access to our privileges that we've earned. I won't even call them privileges,
yeah,
but the redress that we've earned. right. Let me fix that real quick.
Yeah.
But the access that we've earned because of our history, they come over here and access those things. At the same time, some people feel a sense of superiority because they don't understand the history. They ain't gone through the stuff. So there's some complexities there that, again, in the heat of these conversations and in the history of it all, get communicated sometimes in ways that feel alienating to other people because the people who are speaking about it have been alienated by folks that they thought we was just all this Black thing. So there's some relational complexities that need to be dealt with.
Sure, there are nuances for sure. And again, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I will say I haven't had those experiences, but I know people who have. But I have had those experiences with Black Americans as well. You just want a handout. Back to the talking points, that this is a handout. The same people that seem to be fine with the welfare system in all of its degrading complexities find reparation also to be a handout. And I think you've already explained why it isn't, but have a go.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I got into this whole, me and a few other people got into this whole debate in a conservative space with this guy who, or a couple guys who had that perspective. It's like, so I think that not every Black person will appreciate at this point in time, at the point in time that we're having the conversation, the complexities of reparations. And at the same time, people don't want to be seen as a victim, right? We've gotten to this weird place in American society where, like, we have to deny that we've been harmed and injured. People have to hide the hurt because you don't want to be a victim. I'm sorry, there are victims of things. There are victims of human trafficking. There are victims of slavery and forced breeding and rape and the like, and that stuff needs to be repaired. So we're going to have to work with the people who ain't there yet, regardless of their color or their country of origin. And we're going to have to keep the thing pushing because the legitimacy of the claim, to your point, is there, even if they don't know it yet. And it's another reason why we can't have the status of multi-generational Black Americans, of Negroes, be subject to public opinion, because we already know what's going to happen if that's the case, because our minds have been perverted.
And we've seen the polling. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so this idea, there's so much to unpack, but this idea of we can all document, those who are Black Americans can all document through genealogy or other means the fact that we are descendants of enslaved people. When I brought that up, I don't think every homeless person, I think there are lots of people that can't. People, Black Americans or freedmen or Negroes, ran from plantations. They escaped. They joined maroon communities. Sometimes they went to other cities and towns and changed their names. I know folks trying to get their land back right now that are dealing with the complexities of all the ways we disguised ourselves in the system. And I get attacked for that. She's a Pan-Africanist. Yeah, I am. But so what? That's not what I'm talking about right now. The thing is, I can document mine, so don't attack me on that basis. I have a picture of my great-great-grandma who got freed when she was a teenager, all right? So I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about how do we make sure that the largest percentage of deserving Black Americans get reparation, and that's back to my welfareization. And I think the oversimplification that everyone who's, everyone's on the 1860 census or whatever, and that's just not true.
Yeah, definitely. It's not true that everyone be able to tie themselves back to the 1870 census, which was the first census. Yeah, no, it's the first census after emancipation. And there's so many complexities there. Who was taking the census? Did they knock on every door? Did people answer? All the different things.
Right. They don't even get us now. I mean,
right. Because why you need to know who in my house and how many? Come on, get off my porch. Yeah. So There's all those things, which is why I appreciate the California task force focusing on a Black American, a present day living Black American being able to prove that they are a direct bloodline descendant of at least one multi-generational Black American Negro freedman born in the United States prior to 1900. There are about 100,000 Black Americans who are unable to provide a certified birth certificate. Many of them were born during the Jim Crow era in their houses, right? And for whatever reason, they didn't get their birth certified through the state. But that's 100,000 people out of 40 to 50 plus million people, right? So we need to do what we need to do to work out those 100,000 descendants. But otherwise, people should be able to prove their descendancy through that combination of vital records and census data.
Okay, well, we don't have time to go deeper in that. We'll have to do it another day. We just got about a minute here. What do you want to leave us with, Denise?
Well, I appreciate the conversation. I invite people to follow me online on Twitter at @PDeniseLong. You can take a look at us at the Coalition of Concerned Freedmen.com and the accountability efforts that we are putting forth there. And take a look at my writing on Newsweek as well as Medium. Pamela Denise Long is how you can find me on the internet.
All right. Well, Pamela Denise Long, thank you so much for joining us and debunking some talking points on this Tuesday.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
ConcernedFreedmen.com is her website. And it's a great time to call me, 800-920-1580. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network.